Well, I didn't come away from yesterday's press conference, KCPD headquarters, with the new police chief. Not even new anymore, technically, a year into the job. The police chief, Stacey Graves, and Mayor Quinton Lucas, and feel like a whole lot was going to change in 2024. Now, I hope it does. We're coming off a record year for homicides in Kansas City, Missouri. So theoretically, there's only one direction to go, and that would be back down, I would hope. But who the heck knows at this point? Good morning. Happy Thursday. It's great to be here on KCMO. Mayor Lucas is going to be here at 7:30, by the way, so I hope that you'll be tuned in and listening to that conversation in an hour and a half. But as I sat there watching yesterday, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, 182 people were murdered in this town last year. If you're in your car right now and you're driving down the highway, you're going to work, think about how many cars you have to see, how many cars you have to pass, if you even see that many cars at this time in the morning, to get to 182. It's an enormous number when you put it into that kind of perspective. There are thousands of Kansas Cityans impacted by these 182 murders. Family, friends, the empathy that we all should be having for thousands of Kansas Cityans impacted by this record-setting homicide rate is obviously there. It needs to be there. It shouldn't be about the political bickering and who's failing and who's not doing a good job, but that has to be part of the conversation. You can have empathy, as we all should, right? But then also realize that there's a lot of people who are just failing at their jobs, who are not being honest with the public about what the heck is going on here. So as I listened to the press conference yesterday, there was the news side of it, and then there was the, okay, what now? What are the future plans side of it? So the news side of it is that KCPD patrol is going to be going from 10-hour to 11-hour shifts. That was announced yesterday by Stacey Graves.
A police force that delivers a top-notch service to our city, which includes community engagement and enforcement. A new 11-hour shift for all patrol division officers to address critical staffing and deploy more officers on the street during peak times, to reduce response times and provide more opportunities to proactively address crime issues in our community. An evidence-based focused deterrent strategy alongside the city's Partners for Peace and multidisciplinary task force, which has already brought resources to bear.
Now, I've heard mixed reviews on this in the last 18 hours or so from folks within KCPD, going from 10 to 11 hours. Some warning it will lead to more attrition. It will lead to more burnout. It will lead to people saying, you know what, if I needed a reason to finally leave, this is going to be it. I've heard some of that. I've heard more of that than I've heard people saying that they are behind the idea. But heck, something new I'm willing to try, I suppose. So that was the news side. And then there was the, okay, big picture, what are you doing? What's changing? What's the solution here? And the press conference was very light on concrete solutions. Remember, we talked back in September, October about, some plan that was already in motion that was going to be finalized sometime around the new year. That was never brought up. I watched the whole press conference. It was about 28 minutes. And there was none of that was really brought up yesterday. One thing that was mentioned yesterday, let's roll this from Police Chief Stacey Graves.
I also want to set realistic expectations in regard to violent crime. Your police force is just one part of the solution, and we will do our best to prevent violent crime and ensure those who choose violence are held accountable to the degree that we can. We are facing a critical staffing shortage, 300 officers short, and that matters. We are advocating for a city jail with adequate space and services at City Hall and have had positive and productive conversations. I promise to be a good partner with others in our city who are working to reduce violent crime. Together, we hold the key to stopping violent crime in Kansas City. We have to interrupt the culture of violence in Kansas City where conflicts end in gun violence.
Okay, I mean, it sounds good. Prevent violent crime, hold criminals accountable, partner with others. I mean, I like that. Any normal person should like that. But if we're truly about accomplishing those things, then there was a person missing from the press conference yesterday. And that person is Jean Peters Baker, who is the person who is in charge of ultimately holding criminals accountable. I mean, yes, cops arrest people, obviously, but then the person who's in charge, the office who is in charge of holding people accountable, is the prosecutor. And if this was supposed to be a serious press conference to show a united front against criminals in this town who are committing record-setting homicides, well, then it was an utter failure. Now, I understand the police chief cannot drag the prosecutor in front of the cameras. But there should have been something where the three of them, throw the mayor out there, he's not going to turn down the camera, along with the police chief, along with the prosecutor, get the three of them out there, have a united front, talk privately, by the way, about what has to change when it comes to morale in the department, what's going on within the department, making sure that they, as much as they can, trust this prosecutor's office, which we know is not in a good place right now, that relationship, and say, this is done. These punks, these thugs, these murderers, we're going after every single one of them. The drug lords, the drug pushers, low level, we are going after every single one of them. And the violence is going to stop. Instead, we got a lot of words, and I didn't hear a lot of solutions. And I'm not blaming any single person for that. I'm not pointing the finger at the mayor. I'm not pointing the finger at the police chief. Everybody plays a role in this. But because of who was missing yesterday, because of the fact that it was not a united front, there's no way that there can be immediate or even relatively long-term change to the issues as they stand right now. I mean, we had Carl Oakman on the show yesterday, KCK police chief. They have seen a precipitous decline in homicides in that town the last 3 years, from 58 in 2020 to 24 this past year. And that's one of the things that he mentioned, having a united front with the people that matter in the community who are ultimately going to make a difference on crime.
The officers understand, based on when they see the mayor, the commission, the DA, they know they have that support for them to do their job. And why that's important, because instead of just going from 911 call to the next 911 call, they're actually out being proactive, making sure that their district is safe, going the extra mile, talking to the residents, really building that relationship. And that's something that criminals do not want to see.
That's exactly right. You think any criminal was shaking in their boots in KCMO if they even were watching that press conference yesterday, streaming it on social media? You really think that? And this is not a Republican-Democrat issue. I mean, Carl Oakman is in Wyandotte County, which is run by Democrats. DA Mark Dupree. They all are technically Democrats, but it doesn't matter. This isn't a red-blue issue. They have decided in that town they are going to put an end to this. And they're doing it the right way. And as long as there is that missing piece on prosecution, as long as you have patrolmen and women who do not trust the prosecutor in Jackson County, and they don't, we all know that, then not much is going to change. No matter how many press conferences are had, no matter how many happy chats are had, no matter how many meetings are had with, air quotes, community leaders, it's not going to change. And I wish that weren't the case. But I don't see how it does. 913-408-7957. It's 913-408-7957. This press conference at KCPD headquarters took place yesterday, and there's so much still that we're going to have to get into, plus your reaction as well. The mayor of Kansas City at 7:30 as we kick it off on a Thursday morning. Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM. Ultimately, do you think there's going to be proactive policing to start 2024 in KCMO? Like, just ask yourself that honest question. And you may not be somebody who lives in a part of town where there is high crime, but as we know and as we've seen firsthand, as the crime has spiraled out of control, it has spread to areas in town where it typically has not been. Heck, you had somebody shot outside of Union Station the other morning. Now, they weren't killed, thank goodness, but that did happen 2 days ago, Tuesday morning at about 7 a.m. So all this stuff it weaves together. Even if you're somebody who is not in a high-crime part of Kansas City, first off, it's good for you, it's good for your property, it's good for the city, it's good for the region when Kansas City gets its crime under control. And there's little to suggest after a press conference took place yesterday with the police chief and the mayor's going to be on the show at 7:30, so don't miss that. There's very little reason to come out of that feeling like 2024 is going to go a lot different. And I didn't want to feel that way. I wanted to, hear some concrete stuff that was going to be really exciting and engaging. And by the way, I'm so sick of hearing about Omaha. I will give Mayor Lucas this. At the end of the press conference, everyone's like, hey, Omaha, similar sized city, crime's down. Stop with the Omaha reference. It's less than half the size of Kansas City as a metro. There's a lot more issues here. I mean, stop saying, well, if that city's 500,000 and this city's 500,000, they're basically the same city, John. They're not. Stop with that. It's so black and white and so stupid to think of the world.
Omaha sound like Peyton Manning, right?
Omaha. I'm doing my best Peyton Manning. Yeah. But it's, if you listened yesterday, the reporters, they were doing their best Peyton Mannings. Des Moines, Omaha, stop. We're a lot more complex of a region than Omaha and Des Moines. So I give Quentin Lucas credit because at the end of the press conference, he basically said that in a nicer way than I just did. But the reporters were totally missing the point, which is not a shock. They were just kind of getting their talking points from their news directors. And instead of asking some of the questions that I'll be asking the mayor this morning, which is like, okay, there's a multi-pronged attack to stopping violence. Cops, theoretically, yes, can prevent it with some proactive policing, but in large part are just responding to calls. How are you getting these criminals off the streets? And what have I said all week since this has been a big topic all week? If there's one thing that if I could ever twist the mayor's arm to do, and I don't expect it to happen, but it would be for him to use his bully pulpit to go after the prosecutor. He won't do it. It's not going to happen. I wish that he would. But more than any policy, more than any community meeting initiative, that's the one thing that could actually start to change the conversation in this town. Being on the side of law enforcement over the side of the prosecutor, because the prosecutor has put herself firmly against the cops in this community, and that's the biggest problem going right now. If they don't trust her, they're not going to do proactive policing. And then even if they do end up arresting people, they don't have the confidence that she's going to come through with any kind of real prosecution. So all this stuff weaves together, and the mayor will be here in just over an hour to talk about that and much more. And at 7 o'clock, I went back into the archives, and I found something from 2021 that remains the biggest problem with Kansas City when it comes to its homicide numbers. So that's coming up at 7 o'clock right here on KCMO. Do not miss it. You will not hear this from any other local media outlet. Meantime, downtown Kansas City, the guy who owns the old Kansas City Star building, his name is Tony Privitera. He is continuing to advocate for his site for the Kansas City Royals. So he talked to Jonathan Ketz of Fox 4, who's been all over the story, and he's now hoping or suggesting that the Royals could put their stadium to, I guess that would be the east of his building, and then his building, the old KC Star building, could become the entertainment district that the Royals desperately want. I don't know Tony. I have mutual friends with Tony. I do want to get him on the show at some point. But this is starting to sound a little desperate. This is starting to sound like the guy who's, trying to schmooze his way into a first date kind of a thing, where he's like, come on, consider my site. And he's giving all these different options. Consider me. Here's some flowers. Here's some chocolates. And he's playing it out through the media. And listen, it's good for the media. I'm not going to sit here and complain about that part of it. However, it does not seem like it is a legitimate option based on what we've heard, at least in recent weeks. The Royals have two sites they're looking at. This East Village site, which, as we all know, is kind of a made-up neighborhood, but the East Village site downtown inside the Loop. And then, of course, you have North Kansas City. But I'm telling you, it's looking more and more likely with each passing day that downtown is going to be the spot. Because Jackson County and the legislature is still trying to get its act together. They're still trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do if they can get this thing on the ballot to extend the 3/8 cent sales tax by, I guess that would be April is when it would be on the ballot. But they have until January 23rd to get this thing done in the legislature, to then put it on the ballot for April. And the fact that the Royals have had every opportunity to go to Clay County, to tell Jackson County to shove it, and they haven't done it, there's been not a single leak about it, tells me that Clay County is no longer in the mix. That's what it tells. That's just me reading the situation from afar. That's not with any kind of inside information. That's not with me, knowing something from the Royals on this front that's not being reported publicly. It's just the only thing that makes sense to me at this point, John Anthony.
Pete's cruising at an altitude of 30,000 feet.
Yeah,
right?
that's
30,000 foot over. You're going, well, let's see, 1 and 1 is 2.
Yes, and they're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. Clay County has been dead silent on this whole deal. So what other conclusion would you be coming to right now? They've had every opportunity to go, and they're not doing it. 913-408-7957. Coming up next, the Reverend himself has spoken on the higher education issue of our time. We'll get to it next. Well, the Rev has spoken.
Show some RESPICT.
That's right. Reverend Al Sharpton is not happy that Harvard held its president, Claudine Gay, responsible for embarrassing the university, failing to condemn anti-Semitism on Capitol Hill, and then being a serial plagiarist. In fact, Al Sharpton did what he does best. He called everybody, let's say it together, a racist. Thank you very much there, John. I can always count on John to fill in the blanks for me. So Al Sharpton put out a statement on the resignation of Harvard President Claudine Gay. This came out yesterday, and he says here in the statement, where is it, Rev? Here we go. President Gay's resignation is about more than a person or a single incident. This is an attack, says the Rev, on every black woman in this country who's put a crack in the glass ceiling. It's an assault on the health, strength, and future of diversity, equity, and inclusion at a time when corporate America is trying to back out of billions of dollars in commitments. Most of all, this was the result of Bill Ackman's relentless campaign against President Gay, not because of her leadership or credentials, but because he felt she was a DEI hire. Bill Ackman, big banking guy, had pulled some of his potential givings to Harvard until Gay was ousted. He's blaming Bill Ackman. Of course, there's not a moment here where Al Sharpton notes that Claudine Gay embarrassed the university, could not condemn anti-Semitism, and was a serial plagiarist. See, you are not responsible for your own actions, according to Al Sharpton and many in this country, when you check off certain boxes. You are a victim in perpetuity. You can always claim victim status, even when you are somebody who is in the upper echelon of American society, as Claudine Gay is and was. Someone who is earning hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year. In fact, Claudine Gay will still likely earn nearly $900,000 a year despite there being numerous plagiarism allegations against her. This was reported yesterday in Fox Business that she earned, prior to being named president, $879,000 as a Faculty of Arts and Sciences dean in 2021 and $824,000 in 2020, according to the Ivy League schools newspaper, the Harvard Crimson. So she was making about $1 million a year, and she will continue to make that kind of money, even though she's no longer going to be president. She is as privileged as it comes in American society in 2024, making basically $1 million a year and being in the upper echelon of American society as the former president of Harvard, who is still going to be working at Harvard. But Al Sharpton, of course, makes this seem like, well, this is an attack on every black woman in this country. I would be, if I was, and I'm not, although I guess nowadays you can identify as whatever you want, but, you know, if you're a black woman, you should be offended by this statement by Al Sharpton. Why is this an attack on anybody outside of Claudine Gay, who couldn't say the obvious thing on Capitol Hill and also was plagiarizing many times over several years? Why is that an indictment on anybody outside of her? Well, because for those folks who want to divide us based on nothing more than our race and our gender, it has to be. That's how the grift continues. The grift can only continue if everything that happens in culture, everything that happens in this country is broken down to simply one's race and one's gender. That's it. If the president of Harvard was a white male and the same thing happened, this white male went on Capitol Hill and decided that he was going to fail to condemn anti-Semitism, and then it turned out he was a serial plagiarist, do you think Al Sharpton will be standing up for white males everywhere? Of course not. So right there, you're showing, and he's proving that he's a massive hypocrite. We know that's the case. You don't have to, twist his arm to understand what Al Sharpton's going for here. But the grift's not going to end. It can't end. Too many people are making money off the grift. Now, if you're a parent or a grandparent right now and you're saying, well, why do I care about this story? My kids aren't going to Harvard. It's not changing. Well, here's why this story matters to me, and I think should matter to you if you're a parent or a grandparent. And you want to see higher education get upended. You want to see the monopoly of higher education change. And it needs to change. And it's starting to change. It's just happening very slowly. This is a monumental moment for the most prestigious university in this country, where their failures were on full display, where higher education and the cesspool that's become, especially at some of these institutions, has been on full display. That is good for traditional America. Do I think Harvard's changing tomorrow? No, but listen, for 99.9% of us, our kids, our grandkids are not going to Harvard. I mean, I love my girls, but I'd be surprised. Assuming they're my children, which I'm pretty confident they are, I would be surprised if they end up with a shot to go to Harvard. And now they're smart, but Harvard is Harvard. So it's not about Harvard in particular. It's about how this potentially can shake up higher education, how this potentially, over the long term, grows higher education opportunities. What does it do? Does it allow other unique kinds of colleges to come to the forefront and start getting into the game? We mentioned that Elon Musk, a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that Elon Musk is starting his own college focused on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. He's taking and building a STEM school in Austin, Texas. It's not going to be a traditional university setting. It will be a college. You will learn plenty, but it's not going to be the traditional university setting. Does that stuff expedite now in the wake of the failures of the most prominent and prestigious universities in the country, and not just recent weeks, but in recent years? This has been going on for a very long time. Those are the questions that we should be asking. So the micro here is Claudine Gay and laughing at what a failure, she was and inability to condemn anti-Semitism and being a plagiarist and ha, 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 it's funny. But then the macro, the big picture is more about the impacts on higher education and how this is just one chapter in what hopefully is going to be a multi-chapter book where the entire ecosystem around education starts to change, whether it's K through 12 at the state level all the way up to college and beyond. Because one thing that they have shown in the wake of October 7th and the horrible, horrific attacks against innocent Israelis, you have seen the most radical leanings that have been on college campuses for decades, but have gotten worse over the last 5 to 10 years with the DEI initiatives. You saw them on full blast over the last 2.5, 3 months. And, there were people like us who were warning you and warning America that this was happening and these college campuses were becoming these cesspools on a far larger scale than they ever were. But this really put it on full display to the donors and to everyday Americans. And the donor class, in large part, has stepped up and said, we're done with this until you guys clean up your house. And average Americans who maybe weren't paying attention came to the realization that this entire system is broken. And that's in large part a good thing. And that's why it matters to every single one of us, not just to go ha, ha, ha at Harvard's, facepalm. 913-408-7957. 6:43 as we get it rolling on a Thursday morning. Mayor Lucas at 7:30. I know many of you have kids in college. You're sending your kids off to college. It's not too far off. Maybe they just got done with college. It's not nearly as prominent in some of our local state schools as it is at the Harvards and the UPenns and the MITs. But there is an element of this on every single college campus. And, the kids have to be aware of it because if not, they are going to get eaten alive. 913-408-7957. That is also our text line here on KCMO Talk Radio. We will get to more of you on this, plus a new trend that is happening in the workforce. That's coming up on KCMO 95.7. The job trends of 2024 are already getting attention. Good morning on a Thursday. Hope your day is off to a great start. Thanks for making KCMO Talk Radio part of it. So Ken Coleman wrote this for Fox Business yesterday. I saw the story in Fox Business. Ken Coleman, of course, is a Ramsey personality. He joins us on a bi-weekly basis. Does a really good job when he's on the Ramsey Show, and he's kind of the career guru, expert, best-selling author for Dave Ramsey's operation. And it writes here, as the 2024 year gets underway, millions of workers are heading back to their 9-to-5s after the holiday break. Quiet quitting, lazy girl jobs. Do we have one of those? Do we have a lazy girl job? It's not heavy lifting here on KCMO, but is this a lazy girl job?
It's not labor, but we earn our pay.
Well, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And bare minimum Mondays are the trends on social media that are still floated by many members of Gen Z as well as millennials who just don't want to follow traditional employee standards. What does that mean, traditional employee standards? Like doing your job? Like showing up for 8 hours a day and doing what you're asked to do and then going home and doing it again the next day? Traditional employee standards. Like, I don't know, doing what you're getting paid to do? A lazy girl job is the term for those who want to quiet quit. That's very sexist, by the way, is it not?
Seems so.
Why can't dudes... Why can't it be a lazy guy job, a lazy dude job for those who want to quiet quit? Are girls the only ones who want to quit?
Lazy job, right?
Yeah, why are we gendering this whole thing? Jeez, I thought we were over that. Especially Gen Z.
Sure.
They don't know what they are. Like Gen Zers go on a date and they say, "So how long have you been a woman?" That's what they ask each other. I hate to say it, but that's how the dating world is these days. Yeah, you do. So bare minimum Mondays, that's also a trend on social media. That is explained as someone who is doing the absolute bare minimum to get through a Monday. I think Mondays are one of my most, I like Mondays. All the things I've been thinking about for the last couple of days when I get to the office, I try to bang out on Monday. I like Mondays. Tuesdays to me are the worst day of the week, John.
Well, I'm thinking as a boomer, we just kind of did this. We didn't announce it.
Well, maybe that's it. Boomers didn't have social media to post every feeling they ever had.
Just came in and coasted, right?
Yeah.
Monday, man. Waiting for lunchtime right now.
Yeah, maybe that's it. And then as an older millennial, I sit here and I'm trying to balance the boomer Gen Z thing, and I'm just confused by both ends of the spectrum is how I end up.
You're right, though. Any business that continually operates, I mean, we're not here on the weekend, but the place is going.
Yeah.
Right? You come in Monday and you have to catch up on a couple of days' stuff.
Yeah.
And then start the week.
Exactly.
Right?
So I like it. Also, here's what Ken Coleman is saying. He told Fox Business that he believes the 4-day work week is absolutely going to be a thing. Now, it's not happening here. It's going to depend on your line of work. Like, I know already there are jobs, nurses, cops, firefighters, where you can do 4 days of 10 hours versus 5 days of 8 hours. Like, there are certain jobs where it works. And there are certain jobs where they may start considering it. But here's what I don't understand, right? Because Ken Coleman notes here that the 4-day work week is going to be a thing. A study was recently done in London, and it showed that employee productivity did not dip when people worked only 4 days a week. Well, is that because they're participating in bare minimum Mondays and quiet quitting and all these other trends where basically they're showing up to work and not doing anything? I mean, it's easy to keep your productivity the same in 4 versus 5 days a week of work when you're not doing anything, when you're not doing the job to begin with. So I don't want this trend to start. I mean, listen, 3-day weekends are nice. We just had one. Some people are going to have one coming up with Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We're going to be here. I know President's Day for some as well. I mean, the amount of now federal holidays that are out there is ridiculous. But I don't see it being something I want any part of because I want America to remain the most productive country and society in the world. And I'm afraid we're losing that. I mean, when I went to Italy last summer, it was like, does anyone work around here? Does anyone do anything?
Same in France.
It's like people are napping in the middle of the day. It's like, what are you doing? Go to work. Be productive. Please. The government's not here to be your daddy.
Up until 10.
Yeah.
It's 11 now.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, yeah. No, I know what you mean.
Oh, gosh.
See, and that's the thing that's sort of ingrained, and we go over there, and is such a foreign concept to us, right?
It is.
And over here, people, even the slackers are busy. You've got some places to go to chill,
No, they are.
You got to get to the coffee shop. And
we didn't become America by following Europe's lead. We became America by busting our butts and using capitalism to our advantage and hustling and outworking everybody. And my fear from the way our government's run to, people looking for their handouts is we are becoming more European, culturally speaking, and then also politically speaking by the year. And I don't want any part of that. It's not something I'm interested in. It's not something I think America would benefit from. And I'm out. 913-408-7957. It's 913-408-7957 on a Thursday morning as we approach 7 o'clock. Let's say hi to Mike. He is on KCMO 95.7 FM. What's up, Mike? Good morning.
Yeah, studies have shown that people who work 4-day weeks, in this country at least, will a significant number get a part-time job on their day off. And by the way, the better way to do a 4-day week, which I've done 4-10s in the past, is to work Monday and Tuesday, take off Wednesday, then work Thursday and Friday. So you're never working more than 2 days at a time. It makes the work a lot more tolerable. But that aside, you're going to find people that who do work 4-day weeks, they're going to get part-time jobs on their days off.
I hadn't thought about that, Mike. It's a very good point. And maybe that's part of the Biden economy. People can't afford to only have one job. So it's like, I'm going to work 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, and then I got to work my second job the other 3 days because I got to make ends meet in this damn economy where I just saw Chick-fil-A sandwiches went up 21% the last couple of years, John.
Yeah, one summer summer of 80, I was moving furniture. I was just a college kid, but then I worked with a lot of firefighters.
Yeah.
At this moving place, right? So on their day off, they you go around, move some furniture around a couple days a week, pick up some more money.
Well, here's the thing. The side hustle's always been there. I'm all about the side hustle. Yep. I mean, I have a small business that I run and have run for years on the side. So I'm not against, side hustles, small businesses, anything like that. You mentioned firefighters. My dad's father was a firefighter, New York City fire captain, and he built houses on his spare time. Literally. He built houses. They'd move every few years. He'd build a house. They'd move. They'd sell it. I mean, that's how he probably made a lot of his net worth over the years. So, I mean, it's great to have a side hustle. But my larger point is side hustles have always existed. And by the way, the people who are going to have side hustles are going to have side hustles whether it's 5 days a week or 4 days a week. Mm-hmm. All this is doing now is dumbing the culture down and lazying the culture down to the lowest common denominator. That's what this does in large part. Because the hustlers are always going to hustle, right? Those who don't want to hustle are going to be the ones who ultimately are like, this is great. I don't have to work anymore, and someone else is going to take care of me. And that's not the intention here. At least it shouldn't be. 6:56 as we close out the first hour on a Thursday on KCMO. It's great to be here with you. Don't forget to download and stream us on the KCMO Talk Radio app as you get to the office this morning. Coming up next, I went back in the archives. I found something from 2021 that is a major problem with crime in this town that no one in this city is talking about. I'll share it next. Well, is this another bad sign for the Plaza? They are losing another prominent restaurant. Jack's Fish House and Oyster Bar said this week it is closing up on Roanoke Parkway. The restaurant owned by Big Red F Restaurant Group had its last dinner service on New Year's Eve, according to a press release put out this week. Now, why are they going? Well, they're not going to say why they're going. They're not going to say business is bad and it didn't work out for us and the Plaza has unfortunately become too much of a ghost town for them to succeed. No. They said, Dave Query, chef and owner of Jack's and Big Red F, said in a press release, the company was grateful to the Kansas City community, but with the restaurant's lease running out, the company decided to focus on running its restaurants closer to home in Colorado, where it also plans to open additional restaurants in 2024 and 2025. Let's just call it like it is. If the restaurant on the Plaza was doing big numbers and making money, they wouldn't be closing it. Now, the restaurant industry in general is tough. It's one of those things that looks sexy from the outside, but it seems awfully miserable when you actually look under the hood. Like, I am jealous of restaurateurs because if you make it, it seems like it's a lot of fun, but it looks like a totally thankless line of work. I have, not that I would ever have interest in doing it because I wouldn't even know what I was doing, but it just, when you really think about it, you're always working when everyone else wants to be enjoying themselves, right? And you got a hire, pain in the butt to retain. I mean, I know a couple of people in that line of work, and it just sounds miserable. Even the ones that do well, it just sounds like it's a lot of labor. But anyway, if this place was doing well, they wouldn't have shut down, right? They wouldn't have said, hey, we're going to leave this primetime real estate on the Plaza in Kansas City because we're doing well, but we want to focus more on Colorado. That wouldn't happen, but you got to find an excuse, right? They don't want to rag on Kansas City on their way out the door. They don't want to rag on the Plaza. They're going to say, yeah, this place has really gone downhill the last 3.5 years since the summer of 2020. So they put together this nice little press release. We want to focus. It's kind of like when you break up with a girl or a guy, depending on, your situation.
It's not you.
It's not me. You, it's me. Exactly. This is all on me. I've got to focus on me for a little bit. I've got to, hit the reset button on me and find myself and all that stuff, all that nonsense. No, Kansas City got dumped. That's what happened here. Now, my memory, and I told you this story on the air, it was a little over a year ago now. I've been to Jack's Fish House and Oyster Bar once. You remember this story, John, at all? It's okay if you
I
don't.
do.
Oh, you do?
Sure.
Oh, okay. John does remember this
It was
story.
election night.
Gosh, you have I could ask you what you had for lunch 2 days ago. You wouldn't remember.
No.
Okay. But you remember this story. It must have really stood out.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Jack's Fish House.
Former mayor.
Yes. Sly James. It was election night 2022. We were both on the air at KCTV 5 doing our election coverage there. And we get done with our 6 o'clock news. You know, the election coverage starts around 6. Then they go to the national stuff at 7. We got to be back on for the 10 o'clock news. So they got pizza there at the KCTV 5 newsroom. And I was fine eating the pizza. But Sly James says to me, yeah, you want to go get some oysters? And at first I'm like hemming and hawing. I'm like, yeah, not really. But, you know, the guys invite me to oysters. Nice gesture. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm also feeling good. I think it's going to be a big night. Locally, Amanda Atkins might pull it out. Instead, she gets blown out by 12, and I'm running naked laps 2 days later. But anyway, I had high hopes at about 7 o'clock on election night 22. So I'm feeling myself a little bit.
Then the harbinger.
Yeah. So then Sly's like, okay, we'll go to the oyster bar. So we, do we drive I don't think we drove together. I met him there. No. We did drive. He drove me. That's right. He drove me. And as we're driving to the oyster bar, he says, oh, man, I forgot my wallet. I'm like, oh, this is going to go great. I'm like, okay, well, I'll pay for it. So we go, we get a bunch of oysters. It was actually very good. The oysters were top notch. I mean, they slid right off that shell. So, it's good. And we enjoyed the oysters. Think we might have had a drink. Get on back. Now, I paid for it. To his credit, he's a man of his word. His wife did Venmo me a couple of days later for half the oysters. So he's a man of his word. I'm not calling out Sly James by any stretch of the imagination. But, of course, as John noted, when Sly said he forgot his wallet, that was a harbinger of things to come because the night was all downhill from there. The oysters were pretty good. The drink was okay, as I recall. It was good. But then once we started getting some results, things went downhill very quickly. But I should have known what was coming as we get in the car and I forgot the wallet. So that was my last and only experience at Jack's Fish House and Oyster Bar. And it'll be a lasting memory for me. I hope they have success in Colorado, and I hope something great comes to the plaza in its place. It's a prime location there, right there on Roanoke, but it's a heavy lift for this new group out of Dallas to turn around the plaza. And coming up, the mayor of Kansas City, speaking of things happening in town, is going to be here. The press conference yesterday with the police chief on the crime issues that continue to hamper this community. We'll get to that with the mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, next on 95.7 FM KCMO.